Back to the daily grind. Thanks for checking out the channel. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
The UFC is playing games with my heart like the Backstreet Boys. Pause. What the fuck? A full UFC EA Sports 3 video game trailer has been released, and in it, it might only be 1 second longer, but it seems like a longer clip of Conor McGregor versus Tony Ferguson at a press conference in the video game. Now, in the video game, man, there was so much dope shit. It looks like one of the best UFC video games ever, which would make sense since it's the newest. I'm not fucking real good at those games. I ain't played them in a long time. Shit, I ain't been playing games in a while. But I would play that motherfucker, I don't lie. So, man, the game looks dope, and in it they got like the mighty bar. They got Demetrius Johnson pulling off the mighty whiz bar on Ray Borg. They got Conor McGregor clipping up Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor clipping up Eddie Alvarez, Michael Bisping versus George St. Pierre face off. They got a real life shit they're showing in the game. So the fact that they've got even a 1 second or a 2 second fucking clip of Tony Ferguson versus Conor, and it's not really even Tony Ferguson's face, it's just from the height, from the ear, it's about 99% sure that that's Tony Ferguson. So that just leads us to believe that Conor versus Tony is next. And we're already almost there. There's only a few people left that believe everything happening. All these signs pointing to Tony Ferguson versus Conor are still that of just the UFC trying to put pressure on Nate Diaz to sign a cheaper bout agreement. I think by now Nate has already priced himself out of the game. The UFC is going to have Conor defend his title versus the interim champion Tony Ferguson, because that's really what makes sense. Even though Conor, everyone says Conor's going to get whatever he wants, if he wanted to fight Nate Diaz, he would have to get rid of the title, because it really just makes zero sense to have a champion, a healthy, active champion, defend his title versus somebody that's not the interim champion. Nate Diaz is fine getting the title shot until Tony Ferguson won that interim belt. So now Tony Ferguson's the fight that makes sense. Conor's coaches, Conor's team, Conor himself, Dana White, everybody has been pointing toward the Tony Ferguson fight as of late. The UFC trailer is pointing to the Tony Ferguson fight. Nate Diaz hasn't been saying anything about Conor McGregor. Or Tony Ferguson, and someone else pointed out in the comments, Tony Ferguson hasn't been saying defend or vacate on Twitter. Like he was on that defend or vacate, sign the contract, defend or vacate. He hasn't been doing that shit as much lately on Twitter, so I think the contracts might be signed, which would make sense because Conor McGregor has recently came out and said he wants to be a true partner and wants percentages, part of ownership to be, or a promoter to come back and fight. Well, the UFC might have either gave in or they worked something out, because they're rolling out the video game promotion with Conor McGregor as the face of it. He's, the only person on this cover. I think last year it was like Conor and Ronda. This year it's only Conor with both belts, champ shit. And so for all that to be being rolled out, I think the UFC and Conor are in a pretty good place, which means he'll be fighting Tony Ferguson next. The only question is when. Motherfucking when are you guys going to announce it? Hopefully tomorrow at UFC 217, the biggest fight of the year thus far. That will be the announcement of Conor McGregor versus Tony Ferguson. To me, there's only 2 dates that make sense, and that's December 30th, Las Vegas, or UFC 220 in Boston, which is like January 20th or something. And that
Bye, Felicia.